Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning, Tom.
Let's see, I'll turn this on now before we get halfway through. Okay. Well, happy Mother's Day.
Yes,
Yes,
beautiful day.
happy Mother's Day.
That's one I can celebrate as well because I've been called that a lot.
Yes, just there's another appendage behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
Was there a
part of
verb?
two-part
A verb
word,
attached
yeah.
to that?
We were talking earlier, and I said, Teresita, what is it that your mom taught you? And she looked at me, and she said, well, I don't know what you mean. I said, well, it's Mother's Day. What did your mother teach you? Because there are things that my mother taught me that I will carry to the grave. Things like, don't hold your mouth like that because it may freeze. Don't stick your tongue out because a fly could land on it. All the psychology that you really need when you're small.
You're gonna jump off the bridge if everybody else jumps off?
Absolutely.
I tell you what, my mom used quite effectively and probably had the biggest effect on me is 3 words. I'm disappointed in you. That was the worst. You could beat me, you could ground me. Don't tell me you're disappointed in me. Jean learned that one the hard way. She said that once I twisted off and she was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then I explained to her, that's not, don't go there.
Yeah, that's a button.
Yeah.
And it hurts me more than it does you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always had to question that one. It doesn't really hurt you more than it hurts me, I don't think,
I'll give you something to cry for.
All right.
Yeah. Wait till your dad gets home.
Yeah. One of the things when I was in high school, and I would go out, she would say, Thomas. She always called me Thomas when she was being serious. She said, Thomas, don't forget who you are. I can't control what you're gonna go do or anything like that, but I need you to remember who you are. And of course I did not. I really didn't find wisdom in that until I was an adult. So, youngins, don't forget who you are. Because even as adults, we have a hard time identifying with what Yahweh says or who Yahweh says we are.
We rebel against it a lot.
And my mother never gave up on me. She didn't give up on me as a little infant that couldn't breathe. She would sit for hours in the bathroom and steam the bathroom, with hot water from the stove. She would sing to me. And I'm just trying to breathe.
When you have a child, because my son went, I don't think as bad as you, but you just, when your kid can't breathe, it's so stressful.
Yes.
Your mind is always waiting for the next thing.
Yeah. And in the back of her head, she had the words of the doctors at the hospital that said, this child's not going to live past 6. I would walk my baby bed across the floor from breathing so hard. My sternum is still deviated, is what they call it, a deviated sternum from those days. But she never gave up. And I think one thing that I learned from my mother was how to stay at the table. The family table was the place all truces are in effect at Mama's table. You can go outside and kill each other, but you're not going to fight while you're eating supper, you know. But in that, she taught me unconditional love in a way that only a mom could. She never gave up on me, even when I was going through the trials and all that. And the thing that got me the worst was when I came in shackled and handcuffed in the chains dragging. My mother just bowed her head. She was crying her eyes out, and she just prayed, because that's what Mama did when she didn't know what else to do. She prayed. So I say all that to say that our parents, even though they're not sitting us down and saying, okay, here's life instruction number 132, which, by the way, you failed miserably. They taught us through behavioral transference. And they taught us more than probably we even know. But that's what I want to focus on today. Is I'm going to do a little bit of drawing. What is that? Did you see it?
An olive page?
Huh?
Is it the ancient Hebrew?
Yeah, it's paleo.
An olive page?
Yeah, it's very close. It's father.
Oh, okay. I bet.
So this, and there's different ways to do this. Some people do this. But nonetheless, that's father. And what this is the ah, and it means strength. This means foundation. The strong foundation. I think in our lives and our dads taught us what to build on and how to look for what you need to keep I did it. Just the foundational things. One of the things I noticed that guys in prison had one of two things in common. They either had bad relationships with their mother or their father, and sometimes both. So when this father is not portrayed right, the children do not have a strong foundation to build on. What about that?
Is it a limb? An olive limb?
Mother. Again, that's strong or strength. And mem is a symbol for water. So, what is strong water?
I think one way that comes to mind or that I had heard was that water takes the shape of whatever it's put into. So in a sense, the strong water of a mother fills the spot that's needed.
That's good.
Water is considered to be the universal solvent. It has the strength to penetrate or dissolve anything over a given a long enough time.
Wow.
So basically, you know,
Rocks.
break rock. I mean anything.
You know, I was watching a thing on the streaming the other day, and one of my favorite TV shows is How It's Made. You know, I like that. But what they were doing was they were cutting steel plates, like 4-inch steel with water. They couldn't make a blade hard enough where it wouldn't overheat and break. But water did it, and I went, wow. Also, I think strong water could be glue, right? Moms are oftentimes the glue that holds people together, holds families together. A lot of times the moms are the peacemakers. In my case, it was trying to convince my dad why you should not kill me. Because he had all the reasons in his head. But she was the glue that held our family together. And I think that's true of a lot of moms. They do take the shape of whatever they're given, and they do hold things together. Families that I would have at work when I was still a hospice chaplain, the ones that lost the mom first were lost. Because the dad didn't know how to do mama stuff. But yet that's exactly what they needed in that time of bereavement to hold them together. Dad can die, and while it's a sad occasion, they get over it much better because mom is still there instructing. And so when that gets interrupted, it's hard. So I often think about this teaching when it's on Mother's Day. And in both of them is strength, but it's not the same kind of strength. Does that make sense? My dad's version of nurturing was, he would say, it's far enough away from your heart, you're not going to die. Or walk it off. We often joked about my dad when we were cutting wood. If one of us would have cut our leg off, he'd have told us, you better walk that off because I can't afford a hospital bill. And it's like, okay. So they both taught that strength very well and in their own way. So, what do we have next? Huh? So Proverbs 1:8-9.
My son, hear the instruction of your father, and do not forsake the law of your mother.
That's an interesting use of words. It was instruction from your dad, but it was law according to your mother. And so I had Teresita look up these definitions for these words, and let's take a look at those. Properly chastisement, Mom got that down. Figuratively, reproof, a warning or instruction, also a restraint.
That's your father. And there's your mother.
A statute, especially the Decalogue, which is Torah, or the Pentateuch, we know as Torah.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's saying, you know, when dad beats you, you better listen, but mom's the one that makes the law.
Right.
Dad's gonna beat you if you don't follow the law. But if you follow mom's law, maybe you don't have to hear the instruction of your father quite so difficultly. You know?
But the law keeps you within the confines of the covenant, so
Right.
Mama is keeping you within the confines of daddy's, boundaries.
Right.
So Mama's keeping you in that, keeping you straight.
Well, Tom, back when Yeshua's time, was the mother the teacher for the first couple of years?
Mm-hmm.
So she would teach them all. Well, she would teach them Holocaust, whatever they had, she would teach them.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that children's, not their IQ, but their identity, I guess you would say, is defined by the time they're 18 months old. So that's the time Mama has them. And then she prepares them to be able to receive the instruction better.
Like the Spartans, the mothers had them till they were whatever, 5, 6, and then they went to the
Yep.
military.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it stays with you, the things your mama taught you. Things my dad taught me, is don't get your fingers in the saw. Bad things happen. Don't climb a ladder with a chainsaw because you cut your head off. Things like that.
Taught you all the cool words when he was trying to change the spark plugs. You know?
Yep.
Mama was the one that washed her mouth out for using them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there actually, instruction in Torah is actually 2 different words. Torah comes from 3384. If we'll just take a look at that. And this is how we get the teaching and instructions from the root word yawar, to later flow as water, to lay or throw an arrow, figuratively to point out, as with aiming the finger, and to teach. And Teresita, she said, how is that flowing as water? How does Father's word flow like water? I said, well, one of the things flowing water does is get you from here to there. It's a connection. But it also is a teaching on life, how life should be fluid and just flow.
Another thing about water is it always seeks its own level.
What?
Always seeks its own level. So no matter what terrain it's sitting on, what kind of obstacles are in its path, it's always level.
You know, that makes sense, because I had never really thought about it, but when Dad would level the trailer house, he would get a tube, like a clear plastic tube, and he'd mount it on a board with the two ends even with each other. And when that board was on the trailer house, that became a level that he leveled the house with. Interesting.
Hey, Tom? So they'll point out as if by a finger? Is that where they get the little pointer thing they use to read Torah? When you see them going through?
Oh, yeah.
The little pointer thing?
Yeah, and it's the index finger, it's not the other finger.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's take a look at instructions. New car. Properly chastisement, figuratively reproof, warning, instruction, also restraint. Let's take a look at the root word there, 3220 or 3256. To chastise. Blows.
I got both, blows and words. It was usually in combination.
That was when he said this hurts me worse than it hurts you.
It was interesting when I was a little kid. We all go to church, and I had to sit by Dad, and Mama sang in the choir, and my dad had it down while the preacher was preaching. He could stand up in the aisle. He always had an aisle seat for this reason. Jerk me into the aisle, spank me, throw me back in the pew, and sit back down, and the preacher never missed a beat, man. He just kept right on going.
That's the way my mama was. She'd whoop my butt. Didn't matter where.
Right.
Right in the middle of the grocery store. If I was throwing a fit, jerk me up and tune me up right there in front of God and everybody, you know. We
Yeah.
don't want that in today's world.
Yeah, my dad would have definitely been in jail.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they were the guardrails, and if you think of it as guardrails on a bridge, what's the purpose of the guardrails on a bridge?
Keep you from falling all the way off, but doesn't mean you're not gonna get beat up on the way through.
Yeah. Okay. Herd you down, keep you in there. You might be going on a little bit.
And discipline gives you a more and more narrow path. So even if you were hitting side to side, you were still going forward.
I think of the instructions as the instrument that Yahweh gives us to keep us on the straight and narrow path.
I think you're right, Dad. Absolutely. And mom and daddies are given as guardrails. Now, some guardrails are better than other guardrails. Some guardrails are made out of wood, some are made out of concrete, you know. But nonetheless, there's a kind of a series of things. Let's just take a look at them. The biblical duties of parents. Yeah, let's start there. Why do you think Yahweh said, honor your father and your mother, that your days will be long in the land which the Lord your Elohim is giving you?
You don't honor them, then they probably won't kill you. That was the first thing that came to mind. If you get too out of control, they'll just wipe you out and start over again, you know?
I brought you into this world. I'll take you out. I'll make another one just like you.
Yes, oh yeah, and we were convinced that he could.
Well, they were allowed, I don't think there was ever a case, and it wasn't in the Torah that it happened, but if you were like, whatever, if you were just impossible, if you were a really bad person or whatever, they could bring you out and tell them to stone you to death.
Yep, they sure can. So it didn't take too many children getting stoned for all the other children to get the message.
There's no record of that in the Torah, huh?
No, there's not. And that's the hard part, because you know it had to have happened.
Oh, yeah.
Because, people haven't deviated that much from where we were 2,000 years ago. There's still rebellious children, and there's still daddies who handle it wrong. I was one of those daddies that went to the extreme, like when my daughter Bethany would continue to crawl out her window at night, I just took her bedroom door off. Fine, if you can't be trustworthy, well, we're just gonna, and she said, where am I gonna change clothes? I said, there's a bathroom there.
Dave did that, and she asked the same thing.
She was slamming the door. I said, I'll fix that.
Yeah.
You know, door to slam, yeah.
I lost my door too.
Did you really? Oh, wow.
Did you ever lose your door?
No,
No?
no.
Your dad was pretty tough,
I'm
though.
not opposed to that. My dad just beat the crap out of me.
Yeah,
It's like, this is
Her
it.
biological
This place that hurts
dad.
me more than it hurts you.
yeah.
I never believed it.
Did he put thorn bushes underneath your window, or?
No,
That's a trick.
that's a good idea though.
Look at this beautiful bunch of rose bushes we just planted right under your window.
Yeah.
Isn't that gorgeous?
To credit my dad's wrath, I never snuck out of my house. I went to spend the night at my friend's house.
And then sneak
Then I
out.
snuck out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like rules didn't apply at your friend's house.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was easy to leave because she had the garden basement where you could just step on the chair and be right out. And a big window.
Well, you're not sneaking out from the 17th floor.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that makes it a little more difficult than it.
And a little more challenge.
So, but it also teaches you, growing up, even with bad examples, it teaches you one thing that I think is lacking, especially in our country right now, is how to submit. Submit is a bad word these days. But Yeshua was fully submitted unto Yahweh. And he wasn't a slave, he wasn't a robot, he was still, able to think and process it.
Look how many kids are getting killed by the cops, but they're pulling guns on the cops, they're running from the cops, they're fighting them.
Yeah.
I went to, right before we moved, I went to traffic court, to the municipal judge, you have to go before the judge. And Bob, Travis remembers Bob, but Bob got a ticket for not having a driver's license. And so he wanted to go plead his case at court. And the judge told him, you might as well skip through all that crap, because I'm not hearing it, and I'm what matters to you right now. Not your interpretation of something, but my interpretation of whether you need a driver's license or not. So, as I was sitting there, I noticed these children coming in with what I presumed was either their mother or their father. And the court filled up with children. And the lady sitting next to me, so Bob was here on this side, a lady and her son was on this side, and I said, ma'am, can you tell me why all the kids are up here in municipal court? She goes, oh, they got in trouble at school. You get in trouble at school and have to go talk to the cops? Yep. I thought, man, how far have we slidden, and we've just given away our parental, our parental status. And that's not what matters now, but how the kid feels about it. Well, I didn't like getting a spanking by my dad. But it taught me some things that I could only learn as him with the father. But I thought that was sad. And I assume it's that way in Colorado too. Do the children, when they get in trouble at school, do they have to go talk to the police? Do you know?
Not that I know of. I mean, depending on what it is, of course.
Right.
You
But
gotta go to court for truancy eventually.
Eventually.
And if you're gone from school too much, you go see the court. And I think it's more for the parent,
Yeah.
so. Obviously, it doesn't do too much good.
it's not a popular opinion in today's society, but, there's a reason. The fear of your parents is a very healthy thing.
Yes, it is.
And that's not a popular view, but, I was scared to death of different times my mom and my dad getting in trouble. My boys were scared to death of me for many, many years. Not that they didn't know that I loved them and would do anything for them, but at the end of time, that fear of, oh crap, what's gonna happen if I get caught, sometimes changes your decision-making process, And it's gotta be, obviously a lot of people fail. There's the fear without the love. And a lot of times there's the love without the fear, the discipline. There's gotta be a balanced, well, it goes back to water finding its own level. That's kind of the job of the mom, is to lay down the law, but also to keep things
At a level. Yeah.
That's where it's good that they get along.
Huh?
That's where it's good if they get along.
Right.
Parents.
Oh, yeah, well, they
If
get
your mother and father are broken, their relationship is broken. There's no level there either.
No,
Yeah. And that's why it's really important to realize our role as parents at a very young age when we're having children. I didn't get it, and so I set up some very bad patterns in my children's lives. One was anger, but that was all part of being a man that my dad taught me through behavioral transference. Men smoke cigarettes, they cuss, they never say I'm sorry, they don't hug one another unless they lean a little to the left. Those kinds of things is what I learned from my dad. And I had to relearn all of that and how Yahweh says it needs to be. So I think as we grow up, we're taught how to submit, which makes a healthy environment no matter where we are. And I think that's the key to this verse, that you'll live long in the land that Yahweh's given you, is it teaches you to submit on one another, it teaches you to accept that submittance. And it was like our house. The family table was the family table. Everybody ate meals at the family table. what was discussed at the family table stayed at the family table. And I made the mistake, of course, it was me, who I was running my head to a buddy of mine how my oldest sister had gotten in trouble with her boyfriend, and they were late coming in one time, and my dad met my sister at the door. But I didn't know that my friend was cousin to the girl that my sister was friends with.
Uh-huh.
So my sister comes home from school the next day bawling, and my dad wants to know what's going on, and she told him. I thought I was going to die that night because I had broken a very deep-rooted rule that nothing leaves the table.
Well, now everybody, the
Outside
teachers are
circle.
telling the kids, oh, if your parents tell you not to say anything, that's, you know, like it's covering up abuse or like, because they don't want the family to have any
Yeah.
authority.
That's right, because they've replaced the father's authority with the state.
Well, now the kid could go to school and let's say want to change their pronouns, right? And then the school can't even tell the parents. So the school could do, school tells them, don't tell your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had that conversation with somebody at work this week. I could not, I don't believe I could,
Nope.
don't believe I could negotiate having kids in school right now. I believe I'd wind up in jail.
Oh, no, I'd be in jail. I almost was in jail from that, so. I got told to conduct all business on the phone.
She really was, I was there. They were ready to.
It was my last kid, I was a lot older, I'd been through crap with the other two, and I was like, no.
They were very nervous that day.
But you get to a point where you just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. That's scary.
So, one of the things we should learn, and this takes us to number 2, I guess. Number 2, 1, okay. Is to govern with loving kindness. I didn't do that. My children were scarred. My dad didn't do that. We were scarred. And I think I had an old pastor tell me one time, he said, son, you'll be just right for the pulpit on the day you retire. In other words, it takes you a lifetime to train up in, teaching people. And that's how parenting is as well. Let's take a look at Colossians 3:21. Here we go.
Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged.
That's what I did. And it's very hard to overcome that. Some things you just have to live out, I had a guy getting out on parole, and he said, how long do I have to walk with this albatross around my neck? I said, some things you just got to outlive me. I can't give you a date. Number 2, instruct children in righteousness.
Right from wrong.
And there's a lot of scriptures for that. Deuteronomy 11:18, Psalm 78:5, Proverbs 22:6. There's just a lot, but if you need to get one down, Deuteronomy 11:18 through 19. Let's take a look at that.
Therefore you shall lay up these words of mine in your heart and in your soul, and bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall teach them to your children, speaking of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up.
Go ahead and take 20 as well.
And you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates, that your days and the days of your children may be multiplied in the land of which the Lord swore to your fathers to give them, like the days of the heavens above the earth.
So, does everybody know the things that you put by the doorpost? Do you know what they're called? Mezuzahs. Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why is it on the inside and the outside?
Whether you're coming or you're going.
Yeah, and it helps you remember, like my mother said, Thomas, remember who you are. That's a quick snapshot. What about binding them to the frontlets of your eyes? What's that called? Huh? What? Yeah. The feeling. I just put the redneck swang in there. And you know, there's a particular way that they wrap their arms so that when they unwrap them, you still see the marks of the tefillin. You know, just like if I take my wedding ring off and give it to Cat Fling, I can't say that I'm single because my finger is deformed into you can tell I wear a wedding ring. So these things are reminders of who we are, so that we can submit not only to that, but to Yahweh. Let's look at Joel 1:3 as well. Joel 1:3.
Tell your children about it. Let your children tell their children, and their children another generation.
That's why Torah, in its Hebrew language, has been correct for generations. One of the ways they do that, if somebody's going to teach, then they have a witness come up there with them or sitting in the front to keep them online. So it shows us how the actions and the mannerisms make it from one generation to another, to another, to another. Just like Passover, you're supposed to do this in all your generations, so we don't forget. And why is it that Yahweh has set up a structure to keep us reminded? Because He knows that we'll forget. And our recall is always to our benefit. Not necessarily the righteous thing. All right. The third thing is we need to provide for the children. Second Corinthians 12:14. And I'm gonna try to get through this quickly, because I know the hours. Okay.
12:14.
Yes. Unless I wrote it down wrong.
Now for the third time I am writing to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you, for I do not seek yours, but you. For the children ought not to lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children.
What shall they setting up here?
Inheritance.
Inheritance. Also a line of authority, right? My dad was the authority unless grandfather was there. And then my grandfather took the authority. My dad would have gladly let him do that anyway. But there's a line of authority. You ladies, you have a line of authority with the children.
Is grandma more authoritative than mom? Is grandma more authoritative?
Yeah, so
There's
it's
granny
the
law.
same thing with grandpa.
There's granny law.
Literally with mine.
Oh, yeah. Talladega Nights. Good granny law.
What's that?
Talladega Nights.
I
Granny
didn't
law.
see it.
Shake and bake.
But yeah, lines of authority, because in lines of authority, you understand submission.
Ooh, dog, yeah. That was high A octave. Yeah. Go get him, Dad. Go get him.
That's where all the coffee cups begin to shatter. You know.
No fine china in that house, huh?
Number 4, we need to be the good example.
I know moms are a lot better at that than dads, it seems like.
Absolutely.
Well, that's because moms are more nurturing too. That's how they're designed to be.
Let's look at Genesis 18:19. This thing went off.
That was my lost battery.
There.
For I have known him in order that he may command his children and his household after him, that they keep the way of the Lord to do righteousness and justice, that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has spoken to him.
What does that mean?
So the way I take it is that the father knew Abraham, had enough relationship with him that he was confident that Abraham knew what to pass on to his children for the generations to come.
Yeah, and again, there's that line of authority, right? And it's kind of humorous. In a lot of cases, some it's not very humorous, but I've taught Teresita about the ability to look and see the curse line. And you can see it, can't you? Huh?
Yeah, you can see some family curse lines just by looking at people. You're like, ooh, they got the curse line.
Yeah.
Yeah. But over and over, Father Abba is teaching us to submit, to submit, to submit. And here's the line of authority. Here's the line of authority. Submit. Let's take a look at Exodus 13:8 on that same topic.
And you shall tell your son in that day, saying, this is done because of what the Lord did for me when I came up from Egypt.
Again, repetition over and over. Let's look at Titus 2. 2 through 5.
Titus 2, what? 2 through 5. Let the older men be sober, reverent, temperate, sound in faith, in love, in patience. The older women likewise, that they be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given too much wine, teachers of good things, that they may admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be blasphemed.
Again, we're just working out in bigger circles, okay? So let's take this authority structure and let's stretch it out into the congregation, Then let's stretch that out into the community. One of the things I've always said, especially in the institution of the church, is that our society is so messed up because our families are so messed up, because individuals are so messed up, and it starts with the individual. And they've been cutting funding for mental health probably, what would you say, Teresita, for the last 20 or 30 years. They've been cutting funding for mental health. Doesn't set up a good scenario.
Nope. Just look at our homeless population now.
Absolutely. We're told as fathers to direct our households in 1 Timothy 3, 4 through 5.
One who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being puffed up with pride, he fall into the same condemnation as the devil.
What was the devil's condemnation?
All grace.
Yeah, he wanted to be.
Be like God.
He wanted to be equal or higher than the Most High.
He was the most beautiful angel, right?
Oh, he was.
Or he still is. I don't know if he.
Yeah, oh yeah. He's not all gnarly yet.
Last one.
Yeah.
To discipline the children.
Whoop. Discipline abuse.
All right. Yeah, that's
Discipline,
how
abuse.
discipline that our house goes.
I got both.
Isaiah 6,
I got the razor strap.
Thus says the Lord, heaven is my throne and earth my footstool. Where is the house that you will build me? And where is the place of my rest?
Huh.
What? Did you say Isaiah 66, 1?
Yeah, I did.
Heaven is my throne.
Huh?
Nothing about discipline.
Well, it kind of is. Let's continue.
Oh. For all the things my hand has made, and all the things exist, says the Lord. But on this one will I look, on him who is poor and of contrite spirit, and who trembles at my word. He who kills a bull is as if he slays a man. He who sacrifices a lamb as if he breaks a dog's neck. He who offers a grain offering as if he offers swine's blood. He who burns incense as if he blesses an idol. just as they have chosen their own ways, and their soul delights in their abominations. Yep. So will I choose their delusions and bring their fears on them. Because when I called, no one answered. When I spoke, they did not hear. But they did evil before my eyes, and chose that in which I do not delight.
Let's go down to 12.
For thus says the Lord, behold, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the glory of the Gentiles like a flowing stream. Then you shall feed, on her sides shall you be carried, and be
Dandled?
on her knees, as one whom his mother comforts. So I will comfort you, and you shall be comforted in Jerusalem.
So what is all that saying? If we
Good
had to-
question.
Submit and all this bad stuff's gonna happen.
Yeah.
If you don't, if you do, all this stuff's gonna happen.
And Yahweh is the authority. One of the things that I think we miss in the institution of the church, when we teach about, or if they do even teach about authority and delegated authorities, is it's not the authority of man. Yahweh delegates to his people the needed authority for them in a given situation. For example, if we're out of balance and let's say Dad's driving a truck over the road and Mom's at home, well, who's going to be the head of the household?
Mom?
Yeah, Mom.
I was.
Yep.
Truck driver.
Oh, yeah? So yeah, I had a lot of friends that had families and drove a truck. And they were married for a very long time until they retired or quit driving the truck.
Oh, that's,
And,
then they're home.
yeah, yeah,
And then they're gotta try to refigure out those roles. Okay, now who's
Yeah.
gonna be the authority?
right.
Yeah.
So Mom's been the authority for 20 years and now all of a sudden, you want to be the authority?
That's why they both gotta be truck drivers.
Yeah.
Just get them out of the picture early, huh? Yeah.
Even
Well, no, I mean, that's what, well, my mom and dad were truck
Yep.
drivers, you know what I mean? So,
But also, Tom, it goes into that role, especially, I know we're talking about mothers, but into that role of having sons, and the eldest son takes that protective role. Who was it was just talking about that? Black actor.
Oh,
He got-
he's been like canceled.
He's been canceled because he's speaking out, because you can have all the fame and money in the world. That's not going to do anything when someone's coming through that door to attack your family. So when he leaves, the oldest boy, you are the protector now of the household. That is your responsibility, you know. And we're losing that in life too. That's why we got so many. How do I want to say this nicely? Snowflakes or effeminate men. Yeah. So, and maybe it's just the fluoride in the water. I don't know too, but.
But he didn't let them have like cell phones or anything. Like he, even
Oh,
though
yeah.
they're well-to-do and he's a famous actor, they didn't have cell phones. The oldest is some type of younger kids when he's away.
So
Yeah.
who was this? Was it Denzel Washington?
No.
He's not somebody I've seen very often, but you have a video.
You sent it to me,
I
didn't you?
shared it with
Yeah, it's been a while. I can't remember his name now.
So there is a structure, and that structure was set down from heaven. I mean, there was Yahweh. Yahweh made Adam, right? Then he caused Adam to go to sleep, took the rib, made Hava, and started the family, right? It's interesting that children didn't appear on the scene until after they were out of the garden. So that's interesting to me. You know, it's amazing the depth of delusion. And that's why it's important now, most of all, that we know the authority lines and, you know, how Yahweh works, so we can recognize him when he is working, and abide by his parameters. And his parameters is what we call Torah, right? So.
And Tom, was it the Sanhedrin? They had the final word.
Right.
You live, you die, you're out of the community. I mean, so there
Yep.
was this final human authority that they had to listen to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
Thank you for mothers.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
That
you.
was the verse is it in First Timothy, where it talks about giving thanks for the instruction of his mother and grandmother.
Oh, 1 Timothy, there's one in chapter 2 and one in chapter 3. Well, I cannot find it. It's close. Oh, here we go. So 1 Timothy 3:12 and 1 Timothy 3:4-5. Then there's also
We switched.
Huh?
We switched.
Discipline, which we all have talked about, and that we're supposed to, Proverbs 29:13, is that what you got up?
No, we don't have anything else. I looked up 1 Timothy 3:12, let deacons be the husbands of one wife, ruling their children and their own house as well. What scripture were you looking at, Amanda? Were you trying to find?
I think it's 2 Timothy 1, 5. Somewhere around there, 3 through 5. So I thank God whom I serve with a clear conscience, the way my forefathers did, as I constantly remember you in my prayers night and day, longing to see you even as I recall your tears, so that I may be filled with joy. For I am mindful of the sincere faith within you, which first dwelt in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am sure that it is in you as well.
Absolutely. Notice he didn't recognize the grandpa or, you know, it's your mother, not your dad, your mother and her mother. So the 6th bullet would be discipline, Proverbs 29:17. Did we get it already?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay.
Give life, you are love. Bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. You give light.